Okay, hey guys. As promised, it is just after 7, and I am going to get started on this fully painted Remarque of John Constantine. Here in this hardcover copy of Hellblazer. This is with the dust jacket off, so sorry, I've got it zoomed in tight, so it's kind of hard to see, but this is without the dust jacket on, so you can see it's very nice binding that they did. So we're gonna get started. Bear with me. This is the first time I've ever done this, and I'm not very good at multitasking. So if you have a question, throw it into the comments. I'll try to keep up. I'm not exactly sure also the best way to stream this, because I've got my phone, which is filming this, and so that has my live stream going. And I've got that mirrored over onto a MacBook Pro over here. So I hopefully will be able to see the comments, but I can't actually interact with the stream on my MacBook. So I kind of have to look up. I'll try to keep track if there's any comments, but if you got any questions, let me know. But why don't we get started off first by saying cheers, mate, to old con job, and drinking a little bit of whiskey here. It's I'm drinking something called Uncle Nearest, which I just picked up at my liquor store a few days ago. It's quite nice. It's very smooth rye. And then if I run out of that later, I've got one of these silly things in my back pocket, a hard seltzer. So I should be set. And then the first thing I'm going to show you guys is the palette I'm working with. I said in, hey, Kathy, I've got my limited palette set up, and I said this in my little promo earlier, that I was going to be working on a limited palette. So I'll show you that. Instead of trying to bring the camera over here and screw up my shot, I'm going to bring the palette to you, and I'm going to show you what I'm working with. And I'm going to go through the colors first, Bob Ross style. We've got Van Dyke Brown, which is a classic if you've ever watched Bob Ross. Van Dyke Brown, Prussian Blue. This is a more recent red that's come into the market in the last few years, called Pyrrole Red. It is basically a replacement for cadmium red. It's not a heavy metal, so it's not toxic the way that cadmium is, and it actually has a higher chroma count than cad red. So this is a really great replacement for that color, non-toxic, non-carcinogenic as far as I know. And then moving over, we've got Yellow Ochre, another classic of the Bob Ross palette. And then the last color I have is a Warm White. Now, Warm White is not a color that is easy to find, like tubed, like say like from Golden or like your basic brands. I've seen it like here and there in like kind of more like smaller producers of paint. So what I had to do is I had to basically mix up my own Warm White, which is just really a combination. It's titanium white with a very, very small amount of Yellow Ochre and Van Dyke Brown added into it to get to this like kind of creamy color. And so from there, I've gone ahead and I mixed up the base colors that I'm going to be working with tonight. So this is my black that I'm going to be working with, which is just a mixture, basically even like equal parts Prussian Blue and Van Dyke Brown, which makes a really nice, cool black. And then we move up here into the skin tones I'm going to be working with. And I'll kind of show you my inspiration for why I chose these particular ones. So we're starting up here, our dark skin tone, which is a mixture of the Pyrrole Red, yellow ochre, and a little bit of Prussian blue. Prussian blue is a fairly strong pigment, so a little bit goes a long way. I think that's also a common thing that Bob Ross says. And so that's going to be my dark tones. And then we're going to move into my middle tones. And this is just a mixture of pyrrole red with a little bit of yellow ochre right there. And from here, I will move into my lighter skin tones. And as I move into lighter skin tones, that's really simple. The next one, I just added warm white in stages. I think the next one I did add a little bit more yellow ochre into the color. So like right here. So that would be a little bit of yellow ochre, a little bit of warm white, and then come in basically to the last two, which is just adding more warm white to bring that value tone up. So that is the palette. And the reason that I have chosen this palette, I started using this palette a few months ago. I saw it. I mean, I've been familiar with limited palettes, since I was in school. And limited palettes kind of exist as a way for an artist to kind of challenge themselves, to restrict themselves, and through restriction, force yourself to overcome that restriction and find new ways of working, new choices, and new ways of just mixing color and dealing with complicated, like simplifying issues, I guess, in your work. And what's interesting about limited palettes, and there's many different types of limited palettes out there, they kind of do two things at once. They will limit the chromatic scale that you have access to, and in that way, the chroma, like the intensity of the color that you get, kind of becomes limited, but it also becomes uniformed, and that uniformity kind of solves a lot of color theory questions for you right off the bat. Like, that you're going to have a unified color scheme no matter how you mix those paints together, because it's so limited that you can kind of highlight certain colors. And in this case, I am going off of an earlier painted Remarque that I did, which is here. So this was on issue 9 of Hellblazer Dead in America. And so I really like the way that this John turned out. And I was using this exact same palette for that. And I really liked the way that this came together. So I thought I'd do that again tonight. Figured that this would be a good way to show that off. I did, if you can see, there's a little bit more kind of chalkiness in the highlights. So what I did do with the palette that I mixed up tonight is I kept a little bit more chroma in those highlights. At least I think so. With color theory, when you start laying color down and you start juxtapositioning colors, it starts to change from the way that they look by themselves. So we're going to see how it goes. This is fairly small. You can see there's my thumb. So this is kind of the size I like to paint heads. This is also nice. This is a little bit larger, much larger than this, and it becomes kind of it becomes a much different prospect of how I approach it. So then the other thing I'm going to show you before I get started is like my current obsession and what I'm looking at constantly and basically trying to copy and emulate. And that is the work of famous monster movie poster artist Basil Gogos. I'm not sure if that's exactly how you pronounce his name, but I absolutely love his work. I've always known his work, but I managed to pick up a great hardcover copy with an introduction by Rob Zombie at C2E2 this year. So this has been sitting on my drafting table for the past month, and it hasn't left. and I'm kind of obsessed with it. I'm obsessed with his intensity of color. I'm also obsessed with the range of color that he used. I mean, he basically, like, just this one image of Jekyll and Hyde, which I think was who was the actor? Lon Chaney, has basically every color in the palette, but it's so muted, but at the same time incredibly saturated and vibrant. So I just love this stuff. So anyway, that's what we're going to play with. So without further ado, let's get into it. So kind of the way that I like to, here, let me show you my paintbrushes real quick. These are just an assortment of random bullshit. I tend to like to work with rounds and filberts and flats. So this is what I'll be working with. I probably won't use this one too much. It's a little bit big for the image. So anyway, yeah, let's do it. Let's get into it. So the way that I like to start, since we're on a black background, I'm going to start laying in my midtones. And I kind of go in just flat. So let's do that. I'm going to start with this guy. And then real quick, the one other thing that I use, and this is all, I don't think I mentioned, this is all golden heavy body acrylics. The other thing that I like to use, this is basically the medium. This is what I use to thin and extend the paint. Hey, insane leader. Glad you could pop in real quick. Hopefully you can watch the stream later on. I will make sure to have that available. So, but this glazing, this golden satin glazing liquid is what I use to thin my paint. I will use it to actually glaze with the acrylics. Now, I won't be doing that in this because with these Remarques, I want to be as immediate and fast as I can. But I do use this a lot, especially in terms of glazings on my more finished work, my covers and such. So, but nice stuff. So I usually put a big dollop of this onto my palette, which I can start mixing into my color. So, like I said, let's get into it. And at this point, my head's going to be down in my painting. So if I miss your comments, forgive me. I'll try to, if I don't see them pop up, I'll try to answer them later on. Let me get a sip. And let's go. Okay. So I'm going to load my brush up first, so you can't see me doing that. Sorry. I'm going to load that brush up, and I'm going to start going in and laying down basically all of my midtones. And this will take probably a couple layers to get something built up onto this paper, which I can then start to basically build up further. So what this first layer is basically doing is giving me a surface that I can build on top of, because this paper is not primed like it would be if I was working on a cover, which would typically have some kind of medium on it, like a matte medium, some kind of gel medium, acrylic medium that gives you a barrier between the paper surface and the paint, so that the paint actually sits on top of the paper rather than soaking into it. So this first layer is basically doing the job of that. So I'm going to go in and lay this down, and then it's going to dry real quick, and then I'll go back over with another layer, and it'll start to pop, and it won't sink into the page anymore. And then the blue line that you're seeing, that is just transfer paper that I use to transfer my drawing, my reference drawing onto the page with. Like I said, I said in the cheers, Leo. I said in the, or slange, as you'd say in the north, or chin chin, as you'd say in With Nell and I. What was I saying? What was I saying? The blue, the transfer. With John in particular, John has a very specific look because I had a model for John. So when I'm doing these more finished remarks or commissions for that matter, I go back to the original reference that I shot of my friend Nolan, who modeled for me. Because I want to make sure that the John that I represent in my commissions is the John that I drew in the book. So with that in mind, like I said, I go back to my reference. So I did a preliminary drawing, and then I transferred that onto the page with that just blue transfer paper, carbon paper. So, you're right. Okay. I think that's all the yammering I've got for the moment. We'll keep building this up. Try to start moving a little bit faster now. And again, thanks everybody for joining. I'm sorry I don't have the bandwidth to like I said before. I'd wave at you, but it's rigged up to film right now, and I'd be jittering the camera all over the place. So thanks for joining. And like I said, Nick, thank you. This is a commission. This is a painted Remarque inside the hardcover. For Hellblazer Dead in America. Here's the dust cover for that. So I put these up available just so everybody knows. These are available for purchase on my big cartel site, which is Aaron Campbell Arts, and they're $150 a piece. And you can choose from John, Swamp Thing, and Sandman for those. I already did a Swamp Thing, which I have some videos of. Time lapse of me painting that one. But I just, I got an order for a John, so I thought that would be fun to do a live stream of me painting this guy. So that's what I'm working on right now. And right now I'm just trying to get this first layer of paint in so that I can start building up more layers over top of it. I'm trying not to be too precious at this point. So why don't we get a little bit more sloppy? And if I want to become less precious, the best thing for me to do is to get my hand off the page and hold the brush towards the end. And then that starts to loosen me up and to put me into a different headspace. So, might be good also to talk a little bit about my experience on the book. I've come to realize that the work that I did on Hellblazer, at least up until this point, and I don't know, there's something, inside me that really believes this is probably the most significant work that I have ever done and may ever do. Something about John and Hellblazer that gets inside you. You work on it long enough and he becomes this kind of dark traveler. Sorry, let me get a little bit more of that. Dark traveler, this friend, this kind of, I don't know, sometimes toxic friend, but sometimes exactly the person you need in your darkest hour. He can be a real bastard, but he can also be the thing that pulls you, up out of some dark place. And that's what John became for me. And to the point where, and I think that this is kind of similar with a lot of people who have worked on Hellblazer to the extent or more that I have. And I, by no stretch of the imagination, and am close to being the longest running artist on Hellblazer. I think that was who the fuck was that? Fuck, I can't remember off the top of my head. Sean Phillips is pretty damn close to the top. At any rate, I started this in 2018 and have been kind of working on this off and on since then. Steve Dillon, yeah, you're right. It's Steve Dillon. I think I remember looking it up and it's like over 60 issues or something like that, that Steve drew. And I'm way down on the list. But, Cy and I kind of brought this guy back and put him back where he belonged. And so it became just this really deep connection that I had to the point where I felt like John was a friend of mine and that I could feel him in the room with me as I was working or just, during the day, in my studio. And I found myself starting to refer to him as John, not John Constantine or not Hellblazer, not any of that, just colloquially, just as John. And as I was working on the last issue of Hellblazer Dead in America, it was rough. It was a very hard time because I knew it was all coming to an end and it all came up on me so quickly. It's the most significant loss that I've felt since my father passed away. Oh, thank you, Nick. It's the most significant loss I've felt in my life since my father passed away of brain cancer back in 2014. And it's weird to say that about a fictional character, but it's true. And so during that last issue, I made a point of, though I did not have much time, and I remember I was up against the hardest deadline of my life. And for the first 22 days, I did 22 pages. I did one page every single day up until I left in October of last year to go to New York Comic Con. And I had 6 pages left to do when I got back. and I did it. I got 22 pages, and so I was just blowing through it. But it was also what I consider, like, that last issue, I consider to be some of the best work of my entire career, some of the most free and experimental. I was doing photographic process, I was doing painted stuff, I was doing inks, I was doing everything that I had in my tool chest on that issue. And but I made it a point that as I began each stage of the process of creating a comic book, that I would recognize that and honor it. And so when Cy sent me the script for issue 12, I sat there with it, and I said to myself, this is the last time I will receive a script for Hellblazer. And then I did my layouts. And I said, this is the last time I will do layouts for Hellblazer. And then I shot my reference and I brought my models in. And it was incredible. Like, up until that point, you know, I never really considered that my models thought much about what they were doing outside of, like, you know, I was paying them $25 an hour. They come in, they model, and then off they go. But man, it was like a wrap. It was like last day on a film set, because they had all become, I didn't realize that they had all become attached to it. I mean, maybe not as much as I had, but it had become part of their, you know, like their routine and their life. And there were like bittersweet moments as we said goodbye and we wrapped up, and I was like, this is the last time I'm going to shoot reference for Nat, and this is the last time I'm going to shoot reference for Noah and John. Now, granted, you know, John, my model for John is a very close friend of mine, and as long as, you know, DC continues to publish Hellblazer comics, and hopefully, you know, they ask me to come back at least to do, what's your ideal time per page, and do you like to do a complete page or pencils first the inks, etc.? Okay. Let me finish up. You know, my little diatribe here, and then I'll answer that question. What I was saying was basically is, as long as DC will have me at least to do covers for future Hellblazer books, I will absolutely do it. And so, you know, my friend Nolan will always be my John. And so theoretically, you know, that relationship, at least in terms of me shooting reference of him as John, isn't going to end. But yeah, like, you know, when we did the last day of photo shoots, I made sure to tell myself, this is it. This is the last day of shooting. I would pay you to model for and then I did, like I just said, I did that for the entire rest of the process. And I remember as I was getting closer and closer to the end, it became very emotional for me. I was, you know, I'd find myself in the dark hours, my wife would get home and I'd be in here in the studio, like just pushing through these pages and like finding myself crying, and she'd have to console me. Because I was like, my time with John is almost over. Like he's about to leave, which is exactly what he does at the end of Hellblazer: Dead in America. Like he leaves. He just, you know, he does that incredible final joke, that gag on death, and she turns and he's gone. And spoiler alert, but. And that's how it felt for me as I turned in the final pages. I just felt like he didn't quite say goodbye. He just said, "Cheers, mate," and that was that. It was hard. It was very hard. So, original cover for... Oh, shit, you got the original cover for Dark Red #1. That's awesome. I did Dark Red with Tim Seeley, who's a good friend of mine. That's a vampire Nazi thing set in, like, the northern Midwest. And I think that was the first book that I ever did work for Tim. I did all the A covers for that series. That was through Aftershock. I'm not sure if Tim has managed to get those rights back or if he's planning to do anything else with it, or at least, like reprint it. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with those. I've done lots of vampire stuff, weirdly. Yeah. And then, of course, West of Sundown that Tim and I did together, which we co-wrote and I did covers for. So back to that question that Nick asked earlier about my ideal, like, kind of working rate. So yeah, like, one a day is obviously the ideal for everybody. If we could all do one a day, man, we'd be, I don't know, not necessarily rolling in it, but rolling in more of it. But for me, I think an ideal rate is to do a page, like, every day and a half. And if I can keep that up, that puts me on a 6-week schedule, including, reference time, and I'm in pretty good shape. But, every once in a while, like, this inspiration hit, like this kind of divine inspiration hits. I don't know what it is. The fucking muses strike. And that last issue of Hellblazer, those first 22 pages, oh man, I was just on it. And I wasn't tired at the end of the day. I was energized. It all fucking clicked. It's like I was talking about my connection to John earlier, and it was like John was there, like, cheering me on. It was like, you got this, mate. Is what was happening inside my mind. All right, so let's start going in and building up our highlights. So now I've got my darks in, I got my lights in. One thing I like to do is let a little bit of that underdrawing show. I kind of like the blue from the transfer paper, so I'm going to leave that. And whatever's left is left. So let's go in and start doing some cheek work and some nose work. So this is where things are going to start to move probably a little bit faster, because I am just going to hit it. One thing I do have to do right now, which you're not going to see, is I've got headphones on listening to music, and the music that is currently playing sucks. So I need to put on some punk. I don't know why it went to what it is playing right now. I've never even heard of them. So let's get some Crass going. So if you want to follow along, one of my go-to bands when I was drawing Hellblazer was Crass, which is an old school punk band. And I would usually start with the song Banned from the Roxy. And it would get me fucking going. Do you have or will you be willing to share a playlist? I'm lazy about that kind of stuff. I can certainly talk about it. So in terms of punk stuff, the stuff that I would listen to is, like kind of the harder, well, I don't know if it's harder. Like I'm not like a huge punk guy. So I'm sure there's much harder shit than what I listen to. But Crass is an older band that I really like. Fugazi is a band that I like. And then of course into The Clash, which I know that, and Sex Pistols. And I know that The Clash and Sex Pistols had their issues with, or rather, Crass and the Sex Pistols had their issues with The Clash, which they thought of as like, I don't know, basically a corporate punk. And it's definitely, I mean, Clash obviously is much more pop. But fucking London Calling, like that was the way that I started every fucking issue. Like I had to listen to London Calling. And then I would get into, my wife, when we got together, like I grew up in the 90s and I was very much a grunge kid, a grunge and a goth kid. So I listened to White Zombie. I listened to, Nine Inch Nails, Marilyn Manson, and of course the grunge bands, Nine Inch Nails, all that shit. And I wasn't really exposed in the Midwest to, like British, like new wave and British, like pop. So, my wife got me into Blur. And so, Blur is a standard listen, whenever I'm doing John. I have a love-hate relationship with Oasis, and I only think that like a couple of their songs are worth listening to. And then in terms of other shit, God, I'm trying to think. Like, Depeche Mode. And then for me, like the end all and be all for me personally, in terms of British post-punk, is Bauhaus. That is my ultimate band. I got to see Peter Murphy in concert a few years for the 40th anniversary of Bauhaus. It was fucking awesome. 70 years old. Fucking rocked. And so Bauhaus is my... man, I fucking love Bauhaus so much. And then, of course, like Joy Division, New Order, like that's all the kind of stuff. And I have my specific songs that I like. Shadow Play from Joy Division is one of my favorites. In terms of Bauhaus, my absolute favorite Bauhaus song is All We Ever Wanted Was Everything. And man, that's my favorite. That sums up John absolutely. What else? Danzig. Danzig is when I'm trying to get like, heavy, Danzig comes in. Gotta listen to Mother at least once, and then let some other stuff go in. Now when Danzig gets into kind of like his Elvis Presley shit, it's fine, but it I fast forward through that. It's not quite the vibe I'm going for when I'm working on this stuff. So, shit, is that, yeah, those are the hits, I would say. Okay, going up one more value scale. So as I build these layers up, I'm trying to get a bit more and more expressive with my strokes. This is a method of working that I kind of desperately want to mix into my cover work. Hi, Hadrian. Thanks for joining. Because it's immediate, it's not obsessive. I get real obsessive when I start to do finished work, and I don't know what it is. It's a classic trope amongst, artists. You do these amazing sketches that are loose and free and expressive, and then you move on to your finished piece, and everything gets tight. And it becomes maybe prettier, but it loses that energy of that original sketch. And what I love about doing these remarks is that nothing's precious, I can experiment. It's the same thing with commissions. Commissions at conventions give me an opportunity to play around and experiment with technique and process. And I often find new ideas at conventions when I'm like there'll be some company selling some new kind of art supply that I've never seen before. And I pick them up and I'm like, I'll fuck around with these. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then I get like a new little tool in my arsenal. Okay. Let's go one more. We're going up one more step in terms of value. Let's see, where do we want to start? Let's get here in the cheek. It's hilarious. I'm listening to a Crass song right now that literally is shitting on the Clash. So, give me a shout out or a wave or something. Let me see. Let me see it. If you would like to hear my story of meeting John in real life. I want to see the waves roll in. Just like Alan Moore, Brian Azzarello, Jamie Delano, and I'm not exactly sure who else, who have claimed to have met John in actual real life. I had my experience. So it was it was December this past year. I finished up Hellblazer in October, late October. And I was getting ready to head to England for Thought Bubble, which is a convention in the north. Went to England, spent basically most of November there. And for anybody who might be in England right now watching, I will be back in a couple of weeks for MCM in London. So at any rate, we were there most of November. We get back, it is the first weekend of December, and it's my sister-in-law's birthday. We go, I live in Albuquerque, there's an Italian restaurant in our neighborhood that we really like, and we go there pretty regularly because on Wednesdays they have half-price bottles of wine. So that's a hit. And so we go, and we always sit at the bar. It's just where we like to sit. And I'm sitting on one side. My wife is to my left, and then my sister-in-law is on her left. And this tall man, what did I say? I want to say Paul Jenkins met him too. That sounds right. Sean Phillips. Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't had a conversation with anyone who's met him, so can't confirm any of the stories, like any of those other stories, like that way. I wonder if I'll see Sean. No, I don't think Sean's going to be at MCM. At any rate, so this dude sits down next to me. He's tall. He's wearing like he's probably in his 60s. This like shock of gray hair. That's like wild, out of control, but not too long. And, man, did he look like the John that I drew in my book. And I kind of realized that at the time, but it was just kind of, I wasn't really thinking too much about it in the moment. But he was dressed in tatters. He wasn't in a trench coat. So we can put that one to rest right away. But he wasn't in a trench coat, but he was dressed like a dude who was reclaiming some kind of lost punk youth. And I leaned over to my wife and I said this. I nudged her and then I pointed over towards this dude. And I said, homeless or rich? And she giggled and we both said rich. And then he kind of started talking to me. And it became this really weird encounter. And I will tell you, I was just at a convention in Chicago called Nightmare Weekend Chicago, at which Matt Ryan was at. And I've become friendly with Matt. He's a fan of the work that I've done. I'm a fan of the work that he does. So he came over to my table and I told him the story and he was like, "What? No way." And he was like, "I gotta hear it." And so I told him the same story. He was enthralled. So this guy started talking to me. and like just making weird little comments. And sorry, like it's hard for me to tell this story and also paint at the same time. So I'm going to try to like do dips and drabs so you're not just staring at a static image. But he would periodically kind of lean over and make a little comment. He ordered a Guinness from a can at an Italian bar in Albuquerque, and then commenced to complain about how one orders alcohol in America. Because if you are not familiar, in England, the way you order is you go up to the bar, you say, this is what I want, and it doesn't matter if you're at a pub, doesn't matter what it is, whether you order food or if you order drinks, you pay up front, and then they serve you. Which is fucking great, because you pay up front, and then you can just fucking leave when you're done. So he was complaining about that, and I was starting to kind of like giggle and laugh. I was like, this is hilarious, seeing this guy like duck out of water or whatever. And so I leaned over and I asked him, I was like, so I gotta ask, like, where are you from? And he says, and I'm gonna do my terrible English accent for this. He goes, oh, I'm from the big one, mate. I'm from the big one. And of course he meant London. And I was like, oh shit, okay, well then why are you here in Albuquerque? And he's like, I've been working on a film, mate, and I'm wrapping it up, and I gotta get my people taken care of. That's what I'm doing tonight. We just wrap up, and I've got to get my people taken care of. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. What kind of film were you working on? It's like, I've been working on a documentary. And I was like, a documentary? Like, what brought you to, like, why, like, and you're here in Albuquerque filming? He's like, well, we started in LA, but we ended up here. And now we wrapped up, and tonight I've got to get my people taken care of, so we can move on. And then he was back and forth from the bar, and the bartender was at a complete loss, didn't understand. It was like, came up and it was like, did that guy just like abandon his tab? And I was like, no, he's on like a call. He's across the room. Back in the corner talking to people. I don't know what's going on. Sorry, can't really help you about that. And then he'd come back, sit down, continue drinking his Guinness. And I kept trying. At some point I was like, oh shit, man. This guy, if there was anyone who would know who John Constantine is, like, this guy would fucking know. Like, this guy absolutely knows who John Constantine is. I've got to introduce myself. But this is the weird thing. This is when it started to get real weird for me. Every time I tried to introduce myself to him, it started to get real cagey. I'd lean over and say, so, I just wanted to, like, introduce myself. Like, you might be interested. Like, oh, mate, you don't want to get me started, because if you get me started, I'm going to take over your entire night, and you and your lovely wife and your sister-in-law are trying to have a nice birthday dinner. And if you get me started, we're going to be here all night. I'm going to take the entire thing over. So just enjoy your dinner, mate. And then we'd go on, sit for a while. He'd lean in and say something. And I was like, okay, maybe this is my opportunity. Same thing. He would do the same thing again. Every time I attempted to tell him who I was, he got super fucking cagey and shut down the conversation, basically saying, like, you don't want to get me started, because if you do, I'm going to take over your entire world. And some time went by, and he was like, okay, mate, well, if you're here later, I might be back and we can have a proper chat. Otherwise, I gotta get up, because I gotta go find my people and get them taken care of. And so yeah, you have a good night, you and your missus. And he gets up to leave. And I was like, this is my last chance. Hello, Pumpkin Inks. Thanks for joining. I realized this is my last chance to like tell him who I was. And I was like, real quick, I just want to tell you one thing. And he starts to like back away from me. He extends his arm and puts his finger out. And then he says, and from a distance, like 10 feet away, he goes, I'm sorry, mate. I'm sorry. I just can't. I can't. And then he walked away. And that was it. That was the end of that. And it was so weird. So like the entire time this was happening, I was just like, this is a weird encounter I'm having with this dude from England who says he's been working on a film project. He's wrapping up, blah, blah, blah. Like, he's in disheveled clothes. Like every item of clothing he wore was torn and tattered. He even at one point, in order to read the bill, pulled out a pair of red glasses that only had one earpiece. The other one was completely broken off. And it's just ridiculous. And let me get one more sip here. We get home later. And there's a room in my house because me and my wife are like absolute fucking Anglophiles, like to the nth degree. I love England so fucking much. I have a room that we call the Snug, and once again, for those who are not acquainted, in England, bars have these little like spaces, these little rooms that are called snugs, and they're just these like tight little like kind of sequestered units where there's like a table and some chairs and then some kind of walls that close it in, or like partitions, and they're called snugs. And it's all about creating these small intimate spaces for small groups. But also during the Victorian period when the snug came about, it was about like it helped to heat small spaces, because they could put in some coals and stuff into the room, and they could heat up that one little space, and it was for like one little group. So anyway, we get home, we're sitting in what is a snug that I have built in my house, which is a tribute to our love of England. And we have a tavern table in that room that's 300 years old, and it is from England, from the 1720s. And that's where I do all my writing. It's where I kind of like gather my muse and, soak in history and all that kind of shit. Anyway, we're drinking some more wine, and I sit there, and suddenly it fucking hit me. And I started to weep. And I looked at my wife, and I was like, holy shit. I think I had my John experience tonight. I think I had my John experience. And then I just started going back through the entire evening. And this is the part that hit home the most. So he's talking about how he was working on a documentary. And it had wrapped up, and he had to get his people taken care of. He kept saying that. I have to get my people taken care of. Well, if you've read Hellblazer Dead in America, you know that the last 3 issues take place in Hollywood. Nat Noah and Ignatz, they're making a film. And that film is based on the events of the fucking rest of the book. So in essence, it might not be strictly a documentary, but it is basically a fucking documentary that they are filming. And the last issue is all about John making sure that his people get taken care of before he fucking dies. I lost it. I absolutely fucking lost it. Now, I will say that I do take the Brian Azzarello. Brian Azzarello has talked about this. Like, Alan Moore thinks he literally bet John. And it's where there's a classics, one of the most famous quotes of John, which is, do you want to know the secret of magic? Any cunt can do it. That's a quote from Hellblazer. Alan Moore attributes that to his encounter with John in real life. He says that he was in a pub in London, and this dude wearing a trench coat who looked like John, who had a cigarette or was smoking cigarettes, came up to him and said that to him at the bar and then left the bar. So Alan Moore believes that, he literally met a manifestation of John. Brian Azzarello, I think his story was more, he saw someone and it was like lightning striking that person was somehow a personification of John. And I think Brian Azzarello has said, no, I don't believe I actually met John. But I think that events conspired to have me meet someone who, in essence, was an avatar of him. Like at a moment when it was necessary. And for me, meeting that dude in that bar just a month and a half after I had finished, and I had only a week after I had gotten back from England, was one of the most significant encounters of my entire life, and I will never fucking forget it. So having said that, let's load this brush up and let's finish this off with some fucking smoke. Okay, and with that, I thank everyone. This is my first live stream doing this, so thanks everyone for coming and joining me. This was fucking a lot of fun. You know what? Let me sign this real quick before I sign off. I have a pen that I like to do this with, and I'm not sure where I put it. So if there's a last question, throw it at me. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Armalit. Let me grab what I'm going to do my signing with and finish this off. Well, for fuck's sake, I can't find it. So let's do a red Posco. Bam. Alright. It'd be awesome to see you do more of these on a better streaming platform. Yeah, that's kind of what I want to do. So I have a Substack. Okay, so before we leave, I have a Substack. All of my social media. What would be John's guilty pleasure song? Okay, I'm gonna put. I'm just put a pin in that one. I'm gonna come back to it. I've got a Substack, and I know Substack does live, so I might experiment with that. Also, I would like to experiment with Whatnot, just as a platform where I could do this kind of thing, but also during the show, as I start, I just realized I get shit tons of comps whenever I do a cover. So I could do a Whatnot show and have a bunch of these that might not have painted, remarks, but have remarks. And throughout the show, I could put these up for sale because typically what I sell just my remarked issues for at a show is like $35 to like $60. So throw those up. And then the other idea that I had was that I could do I could get some little trading cards and I could do some quick little fast remarks that I could do as giveaways, because I know that's a thing you're supposed to do on Whatnot. So that might be a possibility. And I'm not really sure else. I am very much a Luddite when it comes to technology. So I really kind of need the most streamlined, easiest, most accessible platform possible. But we'll see. So I'm going to keep doing these. I think I'm if you go into my profile and you look through my videos, you're going to see that I did a digital sketch of Solomon Grundy. I forgot to tag it as Solomon Grundy, but I did a remark of Solomon Grundy at this Nightmare weekend last weekend, and I was like, this is great. I love fucking drawing Solomon Grundy. And so I did a digital sketch, and I was like, you know what? I should start doing these basically this size, which is like a 4x6 painting, just as like a Friday night or a Sunday night thing, and it would be fun hangout. So might start doing those. And what was that? I would 100% go all in on a deck of John Smith. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I would love to do that. Twitch might be worth it. I have played around with Twitch before. I actually weirdly ran a Dungeons and Dragons game on Twitch for like a year and a half, which nobody watched. So, but if Twitch is a good place to do that kind of thing, maybe. If I could get an assistant who could help me with all of this, that would be fucking awesome. But I've kind of, to this day, I've yet to find somebody who's really, savvy with all of that. So, having said, John's guilty pleasure song. Real quick, because, Leo, you watched that? You watched the Dark Sun game that I ran? Wow, that's a deep cut. Real quick, just one final point about that dude that I met, because I had mentioned how he was dressed all disheveled. The thing that I connected with when I got home that kind of filled it out was this idea like, holy shit, that guy we met, it's like John if he was trying to relive his mucous membrane days and going back to that. And it actually put a spark in my brain of the idea, like, if we ever got to revisit John, he'd be in his 60s. His hair is gray at this point. Somehow he managed to survive his encounter with death. And when he returns, he's abandoned the trench coat, and there he is dressed, trying to recover that youthful glory of his, simply because of the fact that he managed to be the first person in the history of the universe to get away from her. So, at any rate, having said that, John's guilty pleasure song? Let me go back up here and find this guilty pleasure song. Oh man, this is hard. How cynical is John really? I don't know, man. This is one of the hardest questions I've ever had to answer about John. Okay. I think John's guilty pleasure song would be, and not necessarily a song because I don't know exactly. Wait, no. Yeah. Okay, I think I know which one it is. They Tried to Make Me Go to Rehab by Amy Winehouse. All right. Bam. That's it. All right, guys. So thanks for joining me tonight. And I hope to do this again real soon. So y'all have a good weekend. Struth, Slanjava, Chin Chin, and cheers.